Welcome to another edition of Comic Book Flashback. I'm Marvel Across 316, and we are looking at the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 5. This annual came out in November of 1968, and as we look on the cover today, we have Spider-Man, and we see this caption here. It says, "At long last, the parents of Peter Parker." For once, we're going to finally look at the backstory of Peter Parker's parents. And so it's something really exciting here, something very cool. So we'll look at that today. So before we get started, go ahead and give this video a like, and let's go ahead and get started. As always, this is brought to you by Stan the Man Lee, who wrote this issue, but also his brother, Larry Lieber, contributed to this issue as he drew a lot of the scenes in this comic. We have Mickey DeMeo doing the embellishing. We have Artie Simek on the lettering page, and John Romita as well contributing to the artwork. And so we begin the issue here. We have Spider-Man, and his spider sense is tingling like mad here. What is this all about? And who is the supervillain that we will meet in this issue? You're going to have to stick around because we just got one heck of a great story. It's a pretty lengthy story because it's an annual. So let's go ahead and get started here. Spider-Man looks like he is not in New York City. This is another place, and it's actually Algeria. So Spider-Man, why is Spider-Man in Algeria, and why is he fighting these criminals here? Why are these criminals after Spider-Man to begin with? Well, we're going to have to figure all this out here as we see some great action scenes once again, drawn by John Romita, Larry Lieber. Awesome stuff here. What can I say? Some awesome action scenes. Spider-Man is taking down these guys, and it looks like Spider-Man is actually on a mission for something, and we're going to find what that something is here very shortly. So I'm just going to skim on through some of these scenes here. Spider-Man gets grazed here by this bullet. The bullet grazes his head, and it knocks him into this channel of water. And so these crooks here think that he's dead, and they're going to report that to the Master. Now, who is the Master? Again, a lot of things left up in the air, but everything will be cleared here very shortly. And so Spider-Man luckily survives that grazing from the bullet and surfaces out of the water. And now we're going to go back into the past here and see a little bit of the backstory as to why Spider-Man is in Algeria. And it all starts with Peter Parker helping his Aunt May move this big trunk down to the basement. And while he's doing it, he catches hold of it because he loses his grip, and it tears open apart, and out comes a bunch of photographs, a bunch of newspaper clippings, and also something very significant here, a newspaper article, and it shows Peter Parker's parents. Now, Peter Parker, we need to understand, has no knowledge of his parents. He doesn't know who they were. All he knows from Aunt May is that they died in a plane crash. But we learn here that this newspaper article says that Richard Parker and Mary Parker were spies, and they were suspects in a spy plot against the United States. And so Peter Parker comes to the conclusion that they must have been traitors. So he runs back upstairs, asks Aunt May, what is this newspaper clipping all about? It fell out of the trunk. Aunt May, she notices that Peter Parker knows by now. So she explains, she says, I was only trying to protect you. Me and your uncle were trying to protect you. We didn't want to hurt you with this knowledge. And Aunt May goes back to the past when Peter Parker was just a baby, an infant. His parents truly loved Peter, but Peter's parents would never confide into Aunt May and Uncle Ben as to what their line of work was all about. Well, one day they got on a plane and they kept Peter with Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and they said they would return, but unfortunately, just about 2 weeks later, Uncle Ben sees a newspaper And it reads that they were traitors and that they had died in a plane crash. And so that left Peter Parker to be raised by his aunt and uncle, Uncle Ben and Aunt May. And so that's all the knowledge that Aunt May knows. But she also mentions that there was this guy that she wrote to that lived in Algeria, and he owned this restaurant. And so that will play into a lot here. So Peter Parker walks away with this knowledge, and he's just so hurt. I mean, he can't do anything. All he can think about is his parents being traitors to the United States. So he tries to go find some action here. He changes to Spider-Man. He tries to stop this guy from robbing a bank, but he comes to find out that this guy actually works for the bank. Then, as the days progress here, Peter Parker still is down in the dumps, can't get his parents off his mind, and he's like, you know what? I got to go to Algeria. I got to find out the truth about this. Are my parents really traitors? And so what Spider-Man does here is he goes to the FF headquarters and he asks permission by Reed Richards if he can use one of their jets to go to Algeria. And Reed Richards, being the hospitable man that he is, flies Spider-Man to Algeria. And so we see here that Spider-Man has a free ride here, didn't have to pay for any cost to get on a plane. It was just a free ride thanks to the leader of the Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic. So Spider-Man is now on the mission to find out the truth about his parents. Were they really traitors? And so Spider-Man knows, as Peter Parker, the guy that Aunt May had been talking to, he goes to the guy's restaurant, questions him, and the guy actually knows how to speak English. And we see here that the guy reveals that they were in fact spies and that they had dined at his restaurant. And we come to see here that there's this guy spying on the conversation. So what's this all about? And so he's like, the master must be warned. So Spider-Man webs this guy up, and now he's going to go search the headquarters of this place that supposedly his parents had worked for. And so now we see Spider-Man finally comes to after being grazed by that bullet. We're now in the present day. Now Spider-Man is going to go to that headquarters so he can finally dig up some evidence on his parents. So that's exactly what he does, and he comes across this badge. It's an identification card, and it had Richard Parker on the card. And here, lo and behold, as he's looking at the card, here is our supervillain. Yeah, that's right. It is the Red Skull, who is the arch enemy of Captain America. So Spider-Man will be fighting the Red Skull here in this issue, which is pretty cool. This is the first meeting between Red Skull and Spider-Man. Red Skull sends this big guy to tackle Spider-Man here. And once again, Spider-Man's going to have to put up a valiant fight here against this goon here. His name is Sandor. Spider-Man is thrown into the wall here. Sandor has pretty good strength to be a normal human. Spider-Man webs him up and knocks him down onto his feet. And so Sandor is defeated. Red Skull pretty much gets out of the way here. So now Spider-Man leaves Red Skull's premises knowing the truth that, unfortunately, Richard Parker was a traitor to his country. That's what he's coming to the conclusion of. Well, Red Skull's not going to let Spider-Man off the hook. And so he's going to send someone named the Finisher to go after Spider-Man. And so this guy right here is going to go after Spider-Man. He is a master at detecting people, at locating people. And all he has to use is Spider-Man's costume here, the torn costume from that fight with Sandor, to track down Spider-Man. So Sandor tracks down Spider-Man, and he has a missile launcher within the trunk of his car. And so Spider-Man is going to have to evade this missile. Spider-Man evades the first missile. Then there's a second missile, a much faster missile that's coming straight towards Spider-Man. Spider-Man causes the missile to plunge into the car, causing the finisher here, this guy, to get injured. And so while the finisher is about to die, Spider-Man questions him about Richard Parker. Does he know anything about him? And luckily the finisher does. The finisher reveals that Richard Parker was in fact working for the Red Skull, but he wasn't really working for the Red Skull as an enemy of the U.S., but he was actually a spy for the U.S., going undercover as a spy for the Red Skull. And so the Red Skull finally finds out that Richard Parker and his wife were American spies, and so he sets up an assassination plot that basically causes them to plummet to their deaths in a plane crash. And to hide the evidence, we see that the Red Skull uses this badge so that it reports back to America that Richard Parker was a traitor to the U.S. And so we see that he finally dies, and Spider-Man comes with this information. He's going to go back to the Red Skull's lair, and we're going to see one last battle between the Red Skull and Spider-Man here. And Spider-Man is finally going to figure out the conclusion of why Red Skull tried to kill, or did kill, Peter Parker's parents. And so we see here just more action here. Once again, I said this is a pretty lengthy story. And so through all the fire and stuff, Spider-Man sees that this identification card has been ripped open and that there's something hidden inside. Spider-Man looks into it and finds out that his dad was an American counter spy, answerable only to the U.S. So Richard Parker and his wife, Peter Parker's parents, were in fact American spies, and they died as heroes. And so that's this story. I hope you liked it. It was some pretty cool information, some things you may have not known about Peter Parker's personal life, and some things we never really realized about Peter Parker. So I hope you like this story, and next time we'll be looking again at the return of the Vulture and issue number 63 of Amazing Spider-Man. Hope to see you there. And until next time, keep reading comics.